Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the 12th ICG 2020's Development Dialogue. It's our pleasure that we have with us Ms. Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, Executive Chairperson of Biocon and Biocon Biologics with us, and she'll be in discussion with Mr. Dattaraj Salgaocar, Vice President, International Centre Goa, on entrepreneurship and leadership. We'll begin with introductory remarks by Mr. Yatin Kakotkar, President of the International Centre Goa. Mr. Kakotkar.
Good evening, a warm welcome to the International Centre Goa and to the 12th webinar program of the series 2020's Development Dialogue. The topic today is entrepreneurship and leadership, and the speaker is Ms. Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw. Ms. Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw is a pioneering biotech entrepreneur, a healthcare visionary, a global influencer, and a passionate philanthropist. She's a pioneer of India's biotech industry and founder of Biocon. She's a proud recipient of two of India's highest civilian honors, the Padma Shri and Padma Bhushan. She has been conferred with the EY World Entrepreneur of the Year 2020 award, which is a testimony to her entrepreneurial journey of over 4 decades. She has also been appointed as the Vice Chair of the US-India Business Council in 2021. She has many other international accolades to her credit, including the Order of Australia, Australia's highest civilian honor in 2020, the highest French distinction, Knight of the Legion of Honor in 2016, and Atma Gold Award 2014. She serves on the board of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, USA, Pure Tech Health, USA, Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, USA, and Infosys Narayana Health in India, apart from holding key positions in various industry, educational, government, and professional bodies globally. In conversation with Ms. Mazumdar-Shaw is Mr. Dattaraj Salgaocar. Mr. Salgaocar is the chairman of the Goa-based VM Salgaocar Corporation Private Limited, with a presence in hospitality, real estate, and private equity. He is passionate about education and the arts, and his foundation runs schools and colleges in Goa. He founded the Sunaprans Goa Center for the Arts in 2007, which has transformed the Goan cultural landscape. He's a production engineer from VJTI Bombay University and an MBA from Wharton Business School. Mr. Salgaocar is a founder member of ICG, Vice President of ICG, and chairs the ICG Programs Committee. I now hand over the session to Mr. Salgaocar, and I hope you find it interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Yatin, and a very warm welcome to Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw. Thank you so much, Kiran, for being with us, and thank you for the gift of your time and presence here today with us. So let me dive straight on. Take us back to your childhood, Kiran. How was it growing up in Bengaluru and attending school and college there? What were your dreams and aspirations in your young age?
Well, I think I had a very happy childhood, and basically, I obviously remember it as a time when I enjoyed school. I went to Bishop Cotton Girls' School. I was a good student. I remember during my school days. I then, of course, joined, college. Although I was very disappointed when I didn't get into medical school. I then decided to do zoology honors. And, throughout my time in Bangalore was a lovely city, not so big, not so crowded, not with so much traffic. It was a wonderful time to be in Bangalore. And I remember that I basically then, went on to finish my BSc in zoology honors, and after which I applied for a Master Brewers program in Australia. Thanks to my late father, who basically felt that this would be a very interesting career opportunity for me. And so I proceeded to Australia after that to pursue my brewing education. And, years later, of course, I came back then to start my own company in Bengaluru. But to answer your question, I had a charmed childhood. My father was the managing director of United Breweries. I remember as children, we had the privilege of going and seeing those county cricket matches having meeting cricketers because they used to come to the brewery for a visit on every one of these cricket match occasions. And then, of course, I also remember that I was a good student throughout my school and college. So I remember I got the first rank in my BSc Zoology honors. So from that point of view, I think I have very pleasant memories of my time in Bengaluru.
Thank you. Were there any persons in your family who influenced you? You mentioned your father. What about your mother or grandparents? Were there any teachers who inspired you and shaped your worldviews or ambitions during that time, besides your family members? Who sort of inspired you, to do what you have done now?
Well, my father certainly was a big influence in my life because, I was the only daughter, and yet he would tell me that, I don't want to differentiate between you and your two brothers. You should aspire for anything that a boy can aspire for. And that's why when he talked to me and tried to convince me to pursue brewing, I said to him, why brewing? Isn't it a bit of an unusual career for a woman? And he said, I don't think you should look at it as a gender-based career option. After all, it is science, it is biotechnology, and it shouldn't matter whether you're a boy or a girl. And so he was the one that encouraged me to do brewing. I also remember when, one of the big influences he made on my life forever was when I didn't get into medical college and I asked him to pay a capitation fee to buy me a seat in a medical college. He absolutely put his foot down and he said, Kiran, I want you to always remember that money is a currency not to buy favors with, but to make a difference. I will absolutely refuse to buy a seat if that's what you're asking me to do. And I'm horrified that you're asking me to do such a thing. So he was a very principled man. And those words of him saying that money is a currency with which you make a difference resonates with me even today. And that's why I guess I'm so philanthropic, because that's what I think money ought to be used for.
Wonderful. I think that's great learning for us. You went to be a brewmaster in Australia, and when you came back, I guess there were not many opportunities for women to be hired as a brewmaster or a master brewer. In one of your interviews, of course, you mentioned that the irony that gender discrimination set you on the path which really made you what you are today. Tell us about this journey and what all happened during that time.
So, I was very confident on my return from Australia that I would find a job very easily because I was, very well qualified. I had done very well in my brewing program. And I just thought that, it wouldn't be difficult for me to find a job. But I was surprised because, every brewery I went to would say to me, look, we'd love to hire you, but I don't think we could hire a woman because you would be the only woman in senior management. You would be the only woman brewmaster. I don't know how acceptable you would be to the trade unions, etc., etc. And so none of them would give me a job. And I felt very disappointed and disillusioned, thinking that, come on, if I don't have that problem, why do they have a problem? So I just felt it was unfair. And so, of course, it kind of, forced me to think of other options. And when this opportunity came to start my own company, I guess out of sort of retaliation, I kind of decided to go for it. Knowing jolly well that I had no business experience, I had no capital to invest in a business. I was almost doing it as a kind of a retaliatory act against those who didn't think I was capable of managing their business. And I was almost saying to myself, well, let me prove to them that I can. So that's why I often joke and say that I became an entrepreneur because of a gender bias.
Well, it's fantastic, your journey, but and you started your Biocon story. So the thing goes that from a small home garage with 2 employees, and you were looked upon as a multinational company. I mean, what was the driving force behind your thing? One is, of course, retaliation, but your determination, your zeal. I mean, how did you manage? It must have been so difficult, and how did you make it such a success? Tell us something about it.
Well, when you're young, when you're when you have this kind of conviction of trying to prove your mettle, I guess it kind of gives you a lot of courage. I almost call it foolish courage, because I never thought it was going to be so daunting. You didn't even get daunted because you're trying to prove a point. So I guess when I started the business, all I knew was that I had a strong scientific background, and that, what I was trying to do was something I knew about. Enzyme technology was pretty exciting for me, because brewing science and brewing technology is really about enzymes and enzymatic processes. So I thought, at least to that extent, I knew what this whole business was about. But, I guess what I didn't, I didn't also know what I was getting into was the fact that it was about setting up an organization, recruiting people, raising capital. All this was very new to me because I didn't even know how to do it. So I learned on the job. But I guess, when you finally take a decision to do something, at least I'm a very determined person. And it was that determination coupled with foolish courage that allowed me to basically build this company. And of course, I built it step by step. I mean, I had to overcome a number of credibility hurdles. It wasn't easy for me to recruit people. It wasn't easy for me to raise capital. Banks didn't want to lend to me because they thought I was high risk. I was young. I was only 25 years old. I was a woman. I didn't have any experience, at least business experience. I just had a brewing degree, and I had this great idea of setting up a biotech business based on enzyme technology, biotechnology, which nobody understood. So that was a big risk for them. But I guess basically they allowed me to pursue. Basically one by one, I managed to get people to help me. A banker finally had the courage to give me a credit line. 2 brave people who were retired tractor mechanics decided they would work for me because they needed a job. And, getting those few breaks was good enough for me. And so I started in a very modest, frugal way. I could only afford to have my office in my rented garage. So that's the way I built the business. But then, once you start building the business, once I started making products and exporting, which took me a year, it was good because, at least I had an Irish partner who was willing to buy back whatever I could produce. And so that got me started. And then slowly but surely, I started getting people, who were much more qualified. I started reaching out to young engineers at IITs, and they started joining me. So, I think that sort of helped me build the business in a very interesting way. And although it took me time, I think in 3 or 4 years, I was quite well settled in terms of a nice founding team. I had products that I was exporting. I had even set up a modest R&D lab. And then came the next part of my business, which was to scale up, which was to really scale up a homegrown technology. And again, I had a problem raising venture capital. There was no venture capital. So it was very, very problematic for me to raise debt financing for such a big scale up project. But again, I think it was a fortuitous meeting with Mr. Vagul of ICICI, who then looked at what I was trying to do and say, hey, listen, I've just started up a venture fund, and this is exactly the kind of thing I should fund. So he basically then helped me out, invested in the company, and then I again started, scaling up a very, very interesting technology that became hugely successful. Then on the partnership front, I had a JV with a small Irish biotech company. And the Irish partners got taken over by Unilever. So suddenly I had Unilever as my partners. And Unilever was a great inflection point for me because it suddenly helped me to professionalize and adopt global best practices. Because, a company like Unilever had all the best practices in the world. And I had to benchmark all my processes and practices based on what they required. So it helped me to professionalize very, very rapidly. It also was a time when Unilever made me realize the value of IP. I had no clue what intellectual property was all about. So all this helped to sort of grow up very fast, and therefore my pace of professionalization accelerated in a way that I had never imagined. And it started allowing me to think strategically about value maximization, about adjacencies, about cross-leveraging technologies, and so on and so forth. And that's what made me look at biopharmaceuticals as an opportunity which I should leverage and pursue, because I had some very interesting enzyme technologies that could help me value maximize even further, because enzymes were almost like a commodity, whereas biopharmaceuticals were a specialty. And I felt that leveraging those technologies to biopharmaceuticals would be far greater an opportunity for me than to keep sticking to enzymes. And that's how I moved into biopharmaceuticals. I started with insulin, which obviously was a very important need for India. India was at the epicenter of diabetes, and we were importing all our insulins. So I just felt that this was going to be a very, very big opportunity for me. And that's how I started developing recombinant human insulin. And then that basically allowed me it allowed me to basically then get into a very different field from where I didn't look back. I then hived off my my enzyme business once I went public, because that allowed me to IPO and raise money, because I was then becoming a very interesting biopharmaceutical company. And that's how I basically started building the company, building value, reinventing myself and moving to the next level.
Absolutely fascinating. Thank you for sharing this with us. Of course, Bangalore has its advantages, even then, and of course now, in the sense that Bangalore has great colleges. It has many engineers, scientists, academicians, now tech companies, a tech-savvy environment, and lots of angel investors and venture capitals, which have created a very positive ecosystem for entrepreneurs now. I mean, I think they don't have to look much beyond Bangalore now. Is there a special formula now which Bangalore as a city has created? And, is there, I mean, how can we have more Bangalorus in the country, Kiran?
Well, I think Bangalore is very lucky because we have created a very tech-led ecosystem based on first-generation entrepreneurs. That's what makes Bangalore quite unique. Because if you look at it, whether it's Infosys, Wipro, Mindtree, Biocon, and Narayana Health, and Manipal, all these kind of companies have been very innovative, in the sense we've had first-generation entrepreneurs who basically started their businesses in a very, very frugal but very innovative way. So I think we've created a culture of we can do it. We don't need too much capital, but we will create wealth and we will create value. I think that's the formula we have created. And now that tech has become so important thanks to all these companies, you have a large number of startups who have basically mushroomed over time because of the excitement and they see in the potential of starting up companies that can grow and almost assume the stature of these bigger companies. So I think every one of these unicorns that we see today coming out of Bangalore is based on these first generation entrepreneurs who have the courage and the conviction that they can actually build pretty sustainable businesses. And they don't want to just remain small. They want to actually create value. So they want to unlock value and wealth. So what they do is that they basically grow it in a very frugal way, but then they get to a kind of a level which then becomes very valuable. So I think that's why we've created that whole ecosystem in Bangalore, which is definitely an enviable ecosystem. I think there's no magic formula to that apart from the fact that we have these first generation entrepreneurs, we have the investors, we have a number of components of a very good ecosystem that basically allows this to grow and expand and mushroom.
Yeah, I think it's maybe something in the air, or I don't know what, or maybe something combination of many things, but it is very true that the ecosystem is absolutely fascinating in Bangalore, unlike any other city in the country. You have been global right from the beginning. I mean, it's something which companies in India take a while. What are the ingredients to making a company truly global? I mean, you're Indian, but you're truly global. What are the ingredients to making it such a success and to be a brand which is recognized internationally, Kiran?
So first and foremost, I think, because of Unilever, I've thought very globally. And whenever I did anything, it was not just for the Indian market. I think the mistake a lot of pharmaceutical companies or companies in India make, because they are because they believe it's very expensive to meet certain regulatory norms to be a global company, they basically believe it's better to address lower bars of regulatory hurdles. And that itself is something that denies you global entry. I decided to make big bets. I decided to basically invest in programs that had to look at crossing global hurdles, global benchmarks, global regulatory requirements, even though the bar was very high. Because my view is that if you want to be a global brand, you have to build credibility. You have to be accepted as a reliable brand of high quality. As you know, India has always suffered from this perception hurdle that, India has a quality challenge. India can make low cost products, but the quality is suspect. So I wanted to overcome all those kind of perception hurdles. So the moment I started getting regulatory approval for biologic products, biopharmaceuticals, which was considered to be almost beyond the reach of companies in this part of the world. I mean, I often was told by competitors in the West that, well, I don't think India is a real threat because companies in India will not be able to develop such complex molecules and pass muster with US FDA or Europe. And therefore, I just felt that, well, this is something which I must overcome. And therefore, I started addressing global opportunities by ensuring that I adopted global best practices when it came to regulatory requirements, when it came to manufacturing requirements, when it came to quality requirements and the systems that we needed to put in place to do all of that. So I think, that is what really helped me to become global right from the start. And if you remember enzymes, even when I was developing enzyme technologies, India was a very poor market for me. Most of my markets were global. So I had that global mindset right from day one.
Awesome. I mean, it's just fascinating. Let's talk a bit about the workplace. I mean, you had challenges, when you came back as a brewmaster, and your gender, of course, triggered off certain things in you, which, helped you in a way, and you took it very positively. How important is diversity in the workplace for the success, in terms of gender? I mean, has this helped Biocon?
Well, it's very interesting to ask that question because, when I started Biocon, we had a great diversity, gender diversity in our workforce. In fact, up to the time when we were about 100 employees, we had almost 60 women and 40 men. So the gender ratio was skewed in favor of women. Because in fact, in our R&D, we had a large number of women. And we had many women leaders. Our quality used to be headed by a woman. Manufacturing was headed by a woman. One of the R&D divisions was headed by a woman, and so on. And HR was headed by a woman. So, we had a very large leadership profile of women leaders in our company in the early stages when we were about 100 employees. But the moment we then got into pharmaceuticals and started scaling up, that's where we had the huge challenge of maintaining that gender balance, because today, I hate to admit it, but we are less than 30% when it comes to women in our workforce today. So that is the challenge we are trying to address and see how can we get more women in the workplace. Certain departments are very difficult for women to work, but my major focus now is how do I get more women to be playing leadership roles. Hello? I don't see anyone. I don't know whether something has happened. Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can. Sorry, there was some problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, please go ahead. Sorry about that.
No, so I finished saying what I was. I think most people would have heard me. I think you were the one who was frozen.
Yeah, I think something. Sorry about that. To get to the next point, you've been characterized by great, outstanding leadership, and your strategy or your planning has been absolutely great. Even in challenging times. How would you define your leadership style? I mean, and would you say that it is something you have evolved over the years, or you were sort of having it right from the beginning?
So, I'd like to say that I didn't have the baggage of adopting any particular leadership style. I wanted to adopt my own style because I used to be quite impressed with certain concepts of flat organizations, boundaryless organizations, networked organizations, because I wanted to create a learning organization. And if you want to create a learning organization, then you don't want a pyramidal structure of having hierarchical kind of management. So I used to want to get everybody at various levels to be approachable, getting into basically a networked organization. And my whole approach to management has been, how do I empower people? How do I unleash the potential in everyone to the maximum by basically getting them to own problems and solve problems? So I've created an organization that is very good at problem solving. And I feel that the moment you solve problems as teams, you actually create a very, very robust organization. Because you can be agile, you can respond to challenges, you can be good at crisis management. Even at a time of COVID, I think we've adopted many of these principles to see how do we solve many of these problems, because otherwise, your business will suffer. So I've adopted that problem solving learning culture. And I feel people get very empowered and self-assured when they solve problems.
We see that you mentor a lot of persons also. In your organization, do you have some sort of a system where you take up young, bright people and fast track them to be entrepreneurs or to take up certain other positions in your organization?
So let me answer that question by saying we don't have such a program, but I'm very proud of the fact that Biocon has spawned at least 50 startups, if not more. And many of them are now very successful companies. In fact, my former colleague who used to be the commercial head of Biocon now has a research services company that's valued at almost $1 billion. So I have also been spawning unicorns and very successful startups. And as I said, many of these companies today are very highly valued biotech companies. So I can say that, we've all kind of influenced each others to be entrepreneurial. So the culture in Biocon is very entrepreneurial. When you have a problem-solving culture, it is a very entrepreneurial culture. And many of my colleagues have actually started their own companies. And, either it's a consulting company, either it's a technology company, either it's a full-blown company. But I think we are very proud of the fact that we have over 50 companies that we have spawned from Biocon.
That is fantastic. My congratulations to you. This was not known completely that you spawned 50 companies. Outstanding. India's business environment, of course, has gone through various stages, right from earlier the bureaucracy, the license Raj, to the liberalization, and then we had the crisis, and recently the COVID. There have been some critical periods in India's business and economy. Are there some 3 or 4 critical periods where you felt you took the right decisions in Biocon and got on top? Are there any of those periods, or it was just a normal sort of thing for you to just ride the storms?
Well, if you remember, I started Biocon in 1978, which was at the height of the license Raj. And one good thing that happened to me was, because of the license Raj, which did not allow foreign companies to own majority shareholding, I started this company with my majority ownership. So the foreign partner, the Irish partners I had, were very happy to have a 30% ownership of the company, and yet they helped me so much with technology and what have you. And I had a buyback arrangement with them and what have you. And that actually helped me a lot, because, even when I had Unilever as my partners, then, it was very unusual for them not to have a majority control of a small company in India. So because of that, I was able to basically become an independent company by buying out Unilever when they decided to exit biotech. Okay. Because I had obviously a majority shareholders right of buying them out if they chose to have a change of control. So I think all those things augured very well for me in one way. Secondly, I think, I've been very fortunate in being involved in drafting many of the biotech policies for the country. Being a pioneer in biotech, obviously, the government reached out to me to look at how do we expand this sector. And therefore, I've been very involved in biotech policies, and I've always been the kind of entrepreneur who believes that one should do this for the sector and not for your own company. So based on that, I think we've expanded the biotech sector enormously. And I think that's what has helped me to really benefit from many of the policies, though many policies now are still required. Like, for instance, I do believe that the one area we have now stepped backwards is from the research incentives. We used to enjoy 200% weighted tax deduction on R&D investment, which was removed. And I'm basically trying to tell the government we need to invest in research and research incentives. So we are trying to come up with research-linked incentives, which hopefully will again invigorate investment in innovation.
India, of course, you mentioned earlier about this quality issues and, the perception of Indian products abroad. I mean, the thing about India is, I mean, it's a huge country, and where people get away or look at businesses which have low volume and, high volume and
Low value.
So, and low margins, and but high volume, and which makes them the, quality and all sometimes is compromised. Do you think that, you see in the future that this will change in the years to come, and you will have more companies quality conscious for products in India?
See, first and foremost, I want to correct the perception that just because you have high volume, low value businesses or commodity businesses, that they should be low quality. I think that is a wrong perception, because I think you can still have economies of scale. You can still have a high volume businesses, which is what the Indian business model is. We account for almost 40% of the global generics market. And, we are considered the pharmacy of the world. So from that point of view, yes, it is a high volume, low value business. But having said that, I don't think you compromise on quality there. What it doesn't allow you to do is to basically capture a high value, high margin kind of opportunity, which is what really we need to do through cutting edge innovation, which is yet to be, realized for India, because we've been, very happy with just imitating and, producing Me Too products or Me Too drugs, because, the whole culture has been, licensing technologies, technology transfer fees, and, developing products which are catering to markets that give you lower pricing because of higher volumes. Whether it is pharmaceuticals, whether it's vaccines, whether it's anything, I think that's been the model. But if you want to really develop innovative products for global markets, that's where the margins are, that's where the value is. And I think that's why I go back to the point that we must have research-linked incentives to incentivize investment in innovation. And when you innovate cutting edge or novel products, technologies, or therapies, that's when you can commandeer greater value, greater margins.
Thank you. How important is education in the development of entrepreneurs, in the development of individual and the development of nations? I mean, we have a new education policy now in the country, which is going to be implemented. What is your take on education, and how do you retain the bright and the brightest in India instead of they going overseas for better opportunities?
So when you look at education, and I think the new education policy ought to really make a difference because, Dr. Kasturi Rangan, who actually was the author of the new education policy, is a very thoughtful man, and he has tried to be as inclusive and as expansive to come up with a very, very important and pragmatic education policy. Personally, I believe that what is really important is for education to be a very high-end learning process, a continual learning process. Education has to be about experimental learning, experiential learning. I think that is what the focus is. How do you get new skills? How do you get people to have curiosity-driven learning? That is what I think the education policy ought to is focusing on, and we should focus on that aspect of education. I think today, fortunately, a lot of education is focusing on skill development, is focusing on the learning experience, is focusing on experimental learning and curiosity-driven learning. But I think unless we are really driven towards research and answering unanswered questions, we will never really get the full benefit of education. So I think it's also very important that now technology is also allowing the democratization of education. So you no longer have to worry about a rural student being at a disadvantage and an urban student being at an advantage just because they have two different types of teachers. Today, education is now agnostic to the teachers because teachers now have to adopt technology to teach young people. And that's why you're sort of democratizing education. And I think that's the way it ought to be. Why should, it's like the IT sector. Why should only the IITs produce good software engineers? Why can't the tier 2 and tier 3 engineering colleges also be able to produce very good software engineers? Because once you democratize education through technology, then that learning, that skill, access to skill development should be available anywhere.
Yeah, so true. I think the rural and the villages, I think, will definitely have lots of benefit coming in through technology and 5G and so many other tools which will come in. Talking about giving back, I mean, you've been such an ardent supporter of giving back to the community and to the people. You've been often quoted as saying, Kiran, that my legacy is to be in affordable healthcare. And in your Giving Pledge statement, you have said, I would like to be remembered as someone who made a difference in global healthcare through affordable innovation. Could you just elaborate more on this?
I've always been very concerned about global healthcare, where again, the West gets access to any drug, no matter how expensive it is, and the developing world struggles to get, access to important life-saving medicines. The pandemic is a great example of health inequity. There's been a huge amount of vaccine inequity. We were fortunate in India to be able to vaccinate our population, but many of the poorer countries haven't even, been able to give one dose of vaccine to their people. So I think that, and yet the Western, countries have all vaccinated their people, and they've got a lot of stockpiling of vaccines, and, none of these vaccines are even available to the poorer countries. So I just think that health inequity is something that worries me a lot. And I believe that affordable access to life-saving and essential medicines ought to be something that everyone must be focused on. That is my mantra at Biocon. And I think we've made a huge difference to bringing down the cost of insulin therapy, bringing down the cost of cancer therapy, bringing down the cost of biologics in general. And so I think that's what it's all about.
Thank you. I think that's very noble cause. What about women's health in particular? Is there something we should be concerned with in India about the women's health? And including the mental health of women?
Well, mental health in general, not just women, but I think in general, I think mental health has to be something that we need to take seriously. The pandemic has put a lot of focus on mental health issues because of the way we've all been isolated, secluded, and the whole societal interaction has been denied. And so it's creating many other kinds of mental problems. On the other hand, I would say that in terms of women and infant health, there needs to be a lot of focus, especially in rural India, where, as you know, malnourishment is actually causing a lot of stunting in children. Access to decent healthcare services in maternal care also causes a lot of infant mortality and maternal mortality at childbirth. So I think these are some of the things that we really need to focus on. And of course, maternal health during pregnancy is so important to give, to make sure that children are born healthy. So yes, I think generally women have always been denied good health care because, it's always the males who have been looked after in terms of nourishment and health care. And so today is a time when we do need to look at making sure that women also are included when it comes to providing good health care. I'm really happy with the government's Ayushman Bharat Universal Healthcare Program, because I really think at least here, women have been a focus area, and I hope women will end up getting access to health in an equitable fashion.
No, I meant women's health, mental health, in the sense that
You mean abuse, domestic
abuse,
violence and abuse? Yes, of course. That has come out in a very, very ugly way during the pandemic.
Exactly, yeah.
We do need to focus on that. But fortunately today, the kind of surveillance and, reporting systems that we have created, hopefully we'll see more of these issues surfacing. And we hope that there will be more policies and other recourses that women can have to prevent this. At least now we know that at least the police system is very sensitized to women's health issues. We ourselves in our CSR program are actually supporting a program within the Bangalore police system, which basically Parikrama, it's a program which actually allows women to come to the police station and talk about their problems.
Thank you. We are almost running out. I have a few last couple of questions and then maybe a couple from the audience. What do you do in your spare time? I mean, what are your passions, hobbies, besides, of course, Biocon? I mean, what are your other interests, Kiran?
I really wish I had some good spare time. But, I do enjoy spending a lot of time with my family who's all overseas. So whatever time I get, I kind of see if I can catch up with family. I love, basically I like going to kind of, sea sport kind of activities. I like snorkeling. Maldives is a very, a favorite destination for me for a holiday because I love swimming and snorkeling. I also love, spending time with friends. I like going to jungle resorts. The Kabini is very close to Bangalore, and recently some, very dear friends of mine have introduced me to these kind of very, very exciting, holidays in jungle resorts and looking at wildlife in a very different way. So I think, of course, in my younger days, I used to love golf, and I used to, Of course, I still like to go and visit newer parts of the world. I still want to get to Machu Picchu. But those are the kind of things I like. I like a lot of sightseeing around the world. I like to experience new places. And other than that, of course, I enjoy good food, good wines. So of course, I enjoy my trips to Europe. Both my sister-in-laws are French. And so I spend time in France. And of course, obviously, we do go to many of these wonderful regions that make the most wonderful wines and great food. So I enjoy those kind of experiences. We spend a lot of time in Spain, and Spain is another country that has good wines and good food. So I do a lot of these kind of things, whenever I have the time.
Thank you for sharing this. I just want to close as this, we ask all our resources speakers, can you share your 5 personal mantras with us?
First and foremost, I think one should believe in yourself. I think that you should be very, if in terms of an entrepreneurial approach, I always believe that if you come up with an idea that you think is something that you can shape, you should try and do that. Secondly, believe in unleashing the potential of people, because I think everyone has some latent potential, and as a leader, I think you do need to find ways of unleashing that potential. I've always felt that when I look at myself, I also believe that leadership is about believing that you're a coach of a team, and that a coach of a team always tries to get the best out of the team players, because the team players are obviously a disparate lot. It's not all about them all being this homogeneous kind of a group of people, because the goalkeeper is different, and the forwards are different, and the halfbacks and the center backs and the fullbacks are different. So each team member actually is like having a company. You have different parts of the company, and you need to be that great coach, inspiring people, training people, getting people to understand what they need to do to win. And I think that's the way I look at myself in a leadership role, being the coach and having a great team that knows what it has to do, and basically focuses on winning the game. And you as the coach have to keep, giving them that confidence, giving them that corrective feedback, but letting them do what they need to do at the end of the day, because you cannot be holding the hockey stick or kicking the ball for them. They need to do it themselves.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me just see a few questions we've got. Well, there's one from this is from Satish Chenoy. Thank you, ma'am, for a wonderful talk. Could you please tell us 2 things you're really proud of at Biocon?
I'm really proud of the fact that, we were the first company in the world to get an interchangeable label for our insulin glargine. I think this was a huge event for us, because I remember when we were developing insulin, we had developed it using a very proprietary yeast technology of our own. And I remember many people are telling me that this will never be approved because you're using a different host system. And I said, why not? Science is science. And I want our own proprietary host system, because I don't want to be just a me too insulin. So I think today I'm very proud of the fact that we are the 3rd insulin company in the world with its own proprietary technology. We are now the 3rd largest insulin producers in the world. And I'm really glad that we got an interchangeable insulin that basically allows us to really garner market share in a very credible way in the most difficult market in the world, which is the US. Secondly, so that is a huge credibility battle that I have fought and won. we've also been very successful in getting the first US FDA approval for many other biosimilar biologic products, which was very, very difficult. So I think from a credibility point of view, I think that was extremely important.
Thank you. And one more, successful leaders tend to be autocratic. What do you do to keep yourself not becoming autocratic?
I don't even agree with that statement because I think successful leaders are not autocratic. I think successful leaders need to be decisive. Successful leaders need to have a strong vision, and successful leaders need to be very strong in strategy. But you can't be autocratic, because I don't think autocracy has any place in today's management.
Thank you. Thank you. That's it. We are at the end of our talk. Kiran, once again, thank you so much for your presence and the gift of your time. I know you're such a busy person, and we would like to thank you extremely. It has been very inspirational for us, and for many of the younger people also who are on this webinar. Thank you so much. We wish you all the very best, and I know Goa doesn't offer snorkeling like the Maldives, but
Oh, well,
please do
Goa is a
visit.
lovely place. I love Goa.
Thank you, and hope you visit our international center sometime whenever
Sure.
time permits.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a
Thank you.
lot.